Tails and Scales, The Empty Throne. Chapter 9, The Mistcaster and the Sword. The next morning, Silvus wakes up, half asleep, thinking about his fight with his uncle last night. Placing both talons on his forehead, he makes small growls of frustration. As much as he wants to head to Patalot, he cannot, because his uncle holds him back to help stabilize the banditdom. Not that he doesn't want to, though. Silvus feels that he has no time and his mother could possibly get killed at any moment. Whether his uncle is doing it for his daughter-in-law or is simply paranoid. Believing the kingdom is too dangerous, it doesn't make much difference to him. What does make a difference is that he is being held back. With a tired sigh, Silvus picks up the package beside the bed to look at it as he drifts into his thoughts. He thinks about what will happen if he heads to Patalot without his cousins. According to Orzim, with Maglo under Manchester's control, they can invade Tricia at any moment, and the Trician raptors are not prepared due to the bandits that dwell there. If he pursues Patalot now, there is a chance that the rebels will harm them too, leaving him with no family to return to. He shivers at the thought. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of knocking from the door to his right. "Who is it?" Silvus calls out.
"I am the castle drum, my lord. I have been sent by the Lord Beta to collect you to the throne room for breakfast,"
the voice of a professional female answers. "Tell Tritus I'll come in a moment," Silvus tells the drone through the door. Hearing the drone's footsteps walk away, he gets off the bed and heads to a wardrobe to change into his leather armor and poncho. He tucks the package away under the bed and heads off to the throne room. Into the throne room, Silvus is escorted by the drone to see Eco, Sulfi, Tritus, and Orzim all seated at the dining table enjoying their breakfast. He takes his seat right next to Orzim, who seems to be chatting with Tritus about a group of bandits they encountered last night. The two stop chatting when they notice Silvus joining them for the feast.
"Ah, Silvus, your uncle tells me you're going to help out deal with a group of bandits who have been terrorizing my banditdom, yeah?"
Tritus asks Silvus with a jolly tone. "Yes, he did," Silvus confirms, looking uneasy, while he picks out a few crab biscuits, eating them slowly. In front of him, Sulfi takes notice of Silvus's depressed behavior as she watches him eat a biscuit with an elbow on the table, at the same time resting his head on his folded talon.
"Are you right, dear cousin? You're usually happy to eat crab biscuits,"
she asks him with concern. She ain't wrong about that. Crab biscuits are Silvus's favorite food to eat for breakfast, especially when visiting Tricia. Silvus looks up to Sulfi, who is looking at him worried. She does not know about his fight with her father, so he cannot blame her for not knowing. With a deep breath, he tells her, "Let's just say I did not have a good night's sleep." He turns his head at Orzim, who looks back with an apologetic face in return, knowing what his nephew is talking about. Sulfi only turns back to her food, as Orvin turns his gaze back to Tritus.
"Well then, Tritus, when can you start training the young Silvus?"
Orzim asks him, hoping to change the subject.
"Whenever he's finished with breakfast. It better be soon, because a scout came by telling me that a camp is spotted near the settlement of Harpus."
Tritus turns his attention to Silvus, who is still eating slowly.
"You better hurry if you want to save your mother. Quick, do you?"
With that, Silvus eats up his fill, and he is escorted by Tritus to his personal training room. Inside the candlelit castle basement hall, which almost looked like a dungeon filled with doors, Silvus follows Tritus down with fear written on his face. He is not afraid of the dungeon layout. He is afraid of the small flames that are lit on each candle that hang on the wall. Stopping right by the large metal door, Tritus turns around with a smirk on his face.
"How long was it the last time you used a sword?"
Tritus leans back on the metal doors, listening to the sound of chatter from behind. "I believe it was around 4 winters. I was busy with becoming a Mistcaster, so I had not been able to practice much, Silvus honestly answers his friend, turning to the side, looking suspicious, wondering what his friend is listening to.
Well then, you better start remembering. I brought a lot of guests for us to entertain.
Tritus opens up the doors with his 2 claws to reveal a large circular room filled with tons of guards cheering for their beta lord to come in. Silvus has his jaw dropped in awe at the sight of the guards, sitting in the seats above to watch him and try to spar. Walking into the middle of the ring, Silvus cannot help but circle around the room, seeing all the guards chanting Tritus's name. Is it necessary to have all those guards? Silvus asks him. He feels uneasy at the sight of hundreds of eyes gazing at him. Tritus laughs as he himself turns around to a nearby male drone to order him to bring 2 wooden swords. The drone approaches a nearby cart with practice weapons and does what he is told to do.
It is, mate. What better way to motivate your men than having their superiors show them how it is done?
Tritus takes the wooden swords in glee from the drone. He gives one to Silvus. Then he takes off his cape and crown to give them to the other drone. Silvus follows suit by taking off his poncho, not wanting it to get dirty, and gives it to the same drone who has Tritus's cape and crown.
Aren't you gonna take that glove off, mate?
Tritus asks, cracking his bronze neck and arms. Silvus looks at his left glove with hesitation. He does not want to take it off due to his condition. You do remember what happened when we were hatchlings, right? Silvus tries to reason, hoping his friends get the message.
Oh, right. In that case, keep it on.
Tritus allows Silvus to wear the glove. Telling the drones to back away from the ring, he gets into his battle stance with his wooden sword. Silvus follows suit, making the off-duty guards present cheer, while some of the guards chant Silvus' name. Silvus looks up to see the 4 Magalo guards cheer, while the Tricians gave them stink eyes for cheering against their beta.
Are you ready, mate? If so, I'll let you make the first strike,
Tritus tells him with a cocky look. Silvus turns his gaze back to crack his silver neck and shoulders. He gets back into battle stance with a smirk. With pleasure, mate. Silvus makes his first swing to the left, only for Tritus to block it. He makes another swing to the right, only to be blocked as well. He repeats the same attack while the guards cheer. Silvus makes one more swing to the left, only for Tritus to parry it, followed by a kick to the chest, making his opponent tumble back, almost losing his balance.
Like old times, mate,
Tritus adds, recovering his balance, and begins his strikes. Oh, indeed it is, buddy. Silvus blocks each of his strikes. You becoming beta, me and my studies. Tritus strikes one left, one right, one upward, one right, one left. Silvus keeps his focus on the bronze-scaled opponent as he struggles to keep balance with each block. Due to having less muscle mass than Tritus, Tritus makes one upward strike, but this time, Silvus makes the parry and thrusts his wooden sword at Tritus' chest, pushing him back. The guards gasp at Silvus' sudden counter. Tritus, on the other hand, only laughs as he clutches his chest in pain.
Ha ha ha! You have been practicing with your parrying, have you?
When I was around 16 winters of age, Silvus spins a left strike. I used to practice with 2 friends of mine when I was not with my books. The 2 best friends make a few more strikes and lock up to face each other eye to eye.
You practice with 2 friends, yeah?
Tritus questions as he jumps back to perform a frontal, only for Silvus to dodge it. Silvus himself is starting to feel cocky with himself as he is getting the hang of his swordplay, despite not performing for a long time. Making little sidesteps, still in the ring. He hears 4 Magalo guards continue to cheer for him, earning glares from the Tricians. The 2 friends were brothers who wanted to join the royal army.
What happened to them friends of yours?
Tritus gets back up in position to start making horizontal strikes at Silvus. They ended up joining the royal army when I turned 17. Since then, I went to my studies. Silvus makes a hard swing at Tritus' claw, disarming his wooden sword off into the sky and grabs it. The guards gasp as they watch Silvus hold Tritus' sword on one claw while using the other sword pointed directly at Tritus' neck. Looks like I win, eh? Silvus keeps a cocky smile, with his head slightly turned to the side. He keeps his main sword pointed at his sparring partner as he slowly starts to circle around. The guards, who have been spectating, make nervous glances. Some have sweat coming out of their foreheads. Others are simply chewing on their claws. The Maglo guards only cheer louder for Silvus, who thinks he has the upper claw. Tritus is impressed that his best mate managed to disarm him despite not practicing for a few winters. But he has a cheeky smirk with one more trick up his sleeve.
Well, pal, there's one thing a raptor warrior would rely on when losing his weapons.
He squats down and whips his tail at Silvus' legs to trip him, forcing him to drop down on the ground. Silvus loses his own grip on one of the swords, flying up, allowing Tritus to catch it, and pins Silvus on the ground with his foot and points his sword at his neck, making the guards go wild.
The raptor warrior makes use of his natural weapons.
Tritus withdraws his sword to show his sharp-toed talon at Silvus' neck. Silvus winces in fear as Tritus' toe claw gets closer. Once he sees Tritus retract, he helps him back up. Looks like Silvus is going to need more training than he thought, seeing the guards around him cheer that their beta has won the spar. Silvus continues to spar with Tritus with sword combat during the next 7 sunrises. Each morning he loses the fight to the ever unpredictable opponent. With each loss, he starts to get very annoyed, questioning his supposed gift the Mystatorium told him back at the monastery. He assumes the gift only works for learning new Mistcraft, not physical combat. One day, Silvus rests in his guest bed filled with bruises by the beatings from Tritus. No matter how much effort he puts in, he can never outmaneuver Tritus. At the moment, he begins to lose hope. He hears knocking to his right. "Come in," he calls out, wincing a bit in pain on his head due to having a bruise. From the door enters Sulfi, carrying some soup, along with Eco, who is trying to hold his laughter at the sight of his bruised cousin.
"Looks like Tritus had been doing a number on you like a personal meat bag."
Sulfi glares at Eco's remark, while Silvus only groans, keeping his head on the pillow. "He does have a point, Sulfi. Tritus is just too good." "See, sis? Even the book brain agrees with me." Eco makes a big grin that his only cousin agrees with him. Sulfi makes a small frown and walks up to Silvus' side to place the soup on the nightstand next to him. Then she motions her claw to call forth gravity mist to levitate a nearby wooden chair for her to sit on. She sits on the chair carefully as she does not want to crush the eggs in her belly. She looks at the resting Silvus looking down. Perhaps, maybe he can use some encouragement.
"With that attitude, you'll never get better. Also, Father told me what happened between you two,"
she states, now knowing about the fight between her father and him. Silvus gives his 2 cousins a raised brow, while Sulfi keeps her frown, waiting for what Silvus had to say. Eco only looks confused, wondering what his sister is talking about. "Wait up, there was a fight between Dad and Silvus?" he asks. Silvus gives Eco a quick glare and turns back to Sulfi with a softer expression. "Oh yeah, we fought. I really want to save Mom. She told me to head to Patalot to find Arcus, hoping he gives us help." He looks up at the ceiling with a worried expression. "But Uncle wants me to stay and help. Don't get me wrong. I love you guys too, but..." Silvus pauses his sentence, shedding a tear. Sulfi places her claw on Silvus' shoulder and whispers,
"If you really want to convince Daddy, you You need to go beyond your comfort zone.
What do you mean? Silvus asks her.
There are other ways you can learn sword combat. Here's a hint.
She leans near Silvus's head and whispers.
Use what you know best and adapt.
With that, she gets up and exits the room, leaving Eco dumbfounded. What did she tell you? Ignoring Eco's question, Silvus starts eating the soup, at the same time thinking about what Sophie just said. He gets an idea with a smile. Dude, you're starting to get weird, Eco comments, looking creeped out. At night, around the castle library, Silvus sits at a desk reading a book about sword combat. He hopes he can learn new skills, just like how he learns Mistcraft. He flips a page to read about the defensive style. He knows how to parry sword attacks, but he needs to learn how to block or dodge the tail attacks. He puts the book back on the shelf and spots a strange gray-covered book right next to it. Catching his interest, he takes it out to read it. The book shows a picture of a raptor warrior using a sword like a wand. The book reads about the art of combat with Mistcraft. The art involves using the school of enchanting to one's advantage to gain boosts. Silvus flips the page to see a picture of the warrior igniting his or her sword on fire, which makes him flinch. As he reads, a smile slowly forms on his face, learning a new skill that can put his Mistcraft to the test. Back in the ring, Silvus spars with Tritus again, but this time he focuses on defensive stance. All he does is parry each attack Tritus makes. The spectating guards themselves are starting to get frustrated that Tritus has not hit Silvus yet. Tritus begins to feel himself sweat. No matter how well he swings, Silvus deflects each one. He wonders what his silver opponent is up to. The entire spar, Silvus does not even try to attack. Silvus himself, however, is faring well as he continues to deflect each attack. Seeing Tritus very fatigued, Silvus gets his chance to deflect the sword to disarm him once again. Instead of catching it with his claw, he catches it with his tail. Big mistake, Tritus taunts, believing he can trip Silvus despite his exhausted state. So he tries to do his tail whip again, only for Silvus to jump over it and kick him in the chest. The Trician guards gasp as the Magalo guards jump up to cheer. With a smirk on his face, Silvus twirls his wooden sword, forming a stream of ice, and flicks it. The gust of ice blows from the sword and freezes Tritus on the spot, leaving only his head unfrozen. The spectating guards exchange confused looks with each other. Some of them question if that is allowed, until they heard Tritus laugh with some burr in his voice. You clever little grub. You learned some misplaced spot dial, have you? I sure did. A wise lady told me to use what I know best and adapt, Silvus boasts, putting his two fists on his sides. From the crowd, a familiar middle-aged voice calls out, Silvus! Both Silvus and Tritus turn their heads around to the crowd of guards to see Orzine climbing down with a blank expression, storming up in front of Silvus. At first, Silvus gets scared, believing that he upset his uncle in some way, only for the older raptor's expression to change from blank to shock. Where did you learn how to do that? Orzine puts his two claws on Silvus' shoulders. Silvus looks at Tritus dumbfounded, who just mouths, Don't look at me, and turns back to Orzine. I found a book in the library last night. Show me this book, Orzine demands, shaking his nephew a bit. Mate, I'm still frozen. Silvus and Orzine turn their gaze at Tritus, who is still covered in ice, shivering. Back at the library, Silvus shows his uncle the book where he learned how to use his wooden sword like a wand. Orzine takes the book to examine it. Orzine flips through the pages, surprised that the book is still intact, while Silvus stands in place, waiting for a response. All these years, I lost this book during my training with the knights. Orzine looks at Silvus with joy in his face. When I was a squire, I came here with my mentor for a task with this book.
Must have left it behind when the task was complete. What did the knights do when they found out you lost the book? Silvus asks his uncle. They sent me to Jurassic chapter of the Order to clean up the Stego stables for losing the book, with only a sponge and a bucket of water. It was not pretty, but there is a silver lining. Silvus shivers his spine, imagining his uncle in his younger years scrubbing the entire stable of filthy dinosaurs. After I was done with the cleaning, I came across the village of Omegas, where I met your aunt. You mean Auntie Oria? Where is she? Silvus adds, eager to learn of his aunt's whereabouts. Come to think of it, his Aunt Oria, Eco and Sophie's mother, has been missing during his final week of studies for Mistcraft. I sent her back to Jurassic to be safe with her family. But never mind that. I'll tell you more about her another day. Right now, I have to say, I am impressed that you managed to learn a skill supposed to be learned only between the knights, Orzim exclaims, shaking off the subject of Oria. The way I see it, your mistake allowed me to pick up a new way to defend myself, Silvus adds, as he sees his uncle look at him with a smile. Well, nephew, I think you're ready to join us to hunt down those bandits, so we can save your mother in time. What do you say? Silvus perks up and gives his uncle a quick hug. By the spirits, thanks, uncle. I won't let you or mother down. With that, Silvus runs back to meet up with Tritus to tell him the news without hearing his uncle whisper, Why can't Eco be more like you? End of chapter 9.